Hi there, I'm Becky Hammond, founder and strengths maven over at Isogo and isogostrong.com, where we know that relationships are hard. So let's make them easier with your strengths. And welcome to the Isogo TV video and audio podcast. Here on Isogo TV, we are fueling family connection and work energy by focusing in on your strengths instead of fixating on your weakness. And today, you are joining us for episode 82, right in the middle of our season 4 interview series all about using strengths. Here, leaders, coaches, parents, spouses, regular people are talking about what happens in their lives when they truly begin using and harnessing the strongest things about them in their work or their marriages or their parenting and really beyond. Today's guest is Kissee. Kissee is a self-proclaimed recovering perfectionist, and she calls herself a leadership nerd. But I'd say she's not nerdy at all, as you'll see. Through her business, Propel People, she coaches professionals, builds and facilitates leadership development curriculum for teams, and then she comes and she walks alongside organizations to develop stronger leaders. And this past year, she also launched a second business. It's called Whole Healthy Mamas. And during this interview today, you'll hear that heart that drove this move for this business. You know, from a successful, hard-charging professional to then being completely knocked off center, today, Caitlin shares about the surprise she encountered in motherhood and how her strengths really saved her from the downward trajectory that she was headed in. It's totally real and open and super relevant and practical to the journey of motherhood. So let's dive into this conversation with Caitlin. Hello, Caitlin. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Becky. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm so excited that you are here, kind of just volunteered in the middle of your afternoon to chat with me today. We got connected on Instagram out of all places, yes. Right? I mean, yep. You are younger than me, so that's probably not a surprise to you. I'm like, there's like real people out there. But then we got to really build our connection last summer when we met at the Gallup Strength Summit, and just have really enjoyed following your career and the trajectory of your business and your life since then. So I'm just honored that you are here today, and looking forward to letting the rest of the world know about your story and the impact strengths has had on your life.
Thank you. I'm excited to share and to be here with you.
Thanks. All right. So let's just start off with telling everybody a little bit about yourself, like what your family's like, what you do for work, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I'm married to my husband, Weston. We've been married, it'll be 9 years this month, and we live in Springfield, Missouri. And we have a 3-year-old son, Topher, who keeps us on our toes for sure. I have a background in nonprofit management, and that's what I went to school for. But about 4 years ago, through a series of moves, I started my own company, Propel People Development, and I build leadership curriculum on strengths-based philosophy. Cool. I work with teams as well as coaching individuals, typically managers within organizations. And then just recently, I sort of launched a second brand, still to be determined exactly what that's going to look like. That's really a digital content and community brand called Whole Healthy Mamas that is focused on helping working moms be physically, mentally, and spiritually whole and healthy.
Oh man, that speaks to my heart. I love it. I love that piece. I mean, I do that corporate stuff too, and I mean, you get energy from it, and it's so exciting.
For sure.
And then there's just like a piece of your heart that's just like, yeah, but look at this community of people who would also so benefit from. I mean, I love how you're saying that, like having a whole healthy life. And I'm sure part of that is understanding who they are, so their strengths, Absolutely. How they're wired to live and not compare against others. So
yes.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, when you think about something that you are most proud of recently, give us a little insight into who you are by what's something that you're most proud of.
Sure. Well, I have significance in my top five. It actually was the strength that probably took me the longest to come around on. At first, it didn't feel like a strength, but
Right. Yeah.
so for me, I definitely thrive on external recognition and others kind of seeing what I do and recognizing that. And so recently, I was asked to be interviewed and featured for a publication of an organization I'm a part of. But the topic was what really made me proud. And they asked me to speak to young professional women about mission-driven work, finding your purpose, and that is just my sweet spot, my kind of life's mission, and being able to speak some light into something that I think can be very daunting at that time, transitioning from college into the professional world was really an honor. I just felt very grateful and very proud that someone thought to ask me for my thoughts on that and to have the chance to hold space and to share on that topic.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. I love that they asked you to do it and that you stepped up and said, yeah, I can do that. I have insight on that. Cool. Well, one of the fun things that we've been doing on these interviews is we've been jumping into a randomly selected question from our Dare to Dialogue card deck, our card deck about conversations that can be meaningful around the table or around the conference table, helping people dive into more interesting things about each other. So I'm going to pick one.
Here's some on date night before.
Yeah. We totally have too. It's like, it's fun. It's especially when you like been married as long as you have, and you've known each other for so long, you're like, oh, I don't know if I would have said that about you. Right. Like, what restaurant would you compare yourself to or whatever?
Right, for sure.
All right. So then this one, here we go. When a meeting or appointment is canceled at the last minute, what do you do with your newfound time?
Well, adaptability is my 34th strength.
Oh, so, I was like, you have that? I was like, oh no.
So first, I'd probably panic. But no, I think after that, honestly, right now in my life, I'd probably start digging into my email, which isn't the most exciting answer. But in my perfect world, I would pick up a book that I'm in the middle of and use that extra time to get some extra reading in.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Yeah, and we'll learn a little bit more about your strengths in a few minutes, and that will make a lot of sense, right? And for me, I think, I always have a running to-do list. So sometimes I get really excited when a meeting cancels.
Right.
I'm like, depending on what it is, but I'll be like, all right, good. That meeting was a hassle anyway,
Right. Yeah. Off my schedule.
I'll just reschedule that and do something else. So yeah, I think like you said, checking emails isn't exactly the best fun answer, but
Right.
that is my more typical response. So I have to be honest about that one.
Exactly. You're full transparency.
Yeah, full transparency. Exactly. Cool. Well, as we jump into kind of how the strengths perspective has made a difference in your life, I would love for the people out there that do understand and kind of relate to the Strengths Finder language, why don't you just start off by telling us what your top 5 strengths are?
Sure. So my top 5 are input, communication, achiever, learner, and significance.
Aha. So there's that input learner combo.
Yes. There's picking up the book.
The books. Yeah. Cool. Well, so when you first came across the strengths concept in general, what problems were you looking to solve or encountering in your life? Or maybe even what were you most thinking about in your life at that point?
Sure. Well, it's funny because I feel like introduced to strengths a couple times.
Okay.
I was first exposed to it about 12 years ago when I was going into my first job after college. And I think it had some value. I know it had some value then, but it didn't stick or transform. I don't think I was ready to be transformed at that point.
Yep.
I probably thought I knew everything that I needed to know because, I was fresh out of college. I was an expert in all things. But then I was really it was kind of reinforced for me in graduate school. And this was right around the time that I actually ended up launching Propel, my strengths-based business. And what I was going through at that time was a lot of burnout, both in my work and being a graduate student. A lot of what I say now, I'm a recovering perfectionist. And then I was definitely in the height of the grips of how ugly that can be if it's kind of out of control. It's like when the achiever volume is just cranked up so high that I was very task oriented, probably to the detriment of a lot of relationships. And I also just didn't see myself as very valuable. I didn't understand how to embrace my strengths. And there was a turning point in my life. I had a professor in grad school say to me, quit seeing yourself as a liability. You are an asset.
Wow.
And that really, to me, was strengths in a phrase. And so that's when strength started to take hold in my life. But about a year after that, when I became a mom, was when I feel like I fell back into deficiency thinking, and I had to refine strengths because I needed it so much in my life. That transition into motherhood was really hard for me, and I found myself blaming it on the way I was wired.
Mm-hmm. And what did that, so what were like the questions and the doubts that were going through your head when all of a sudden, you've been this successful young professional.
Yeah.
You've now been through a lot of school. You've like mastered a lot of things. If I can get the vibe, or I make a prediction, you're really good at those things. And now you've just entered into this space where you're like blown off your feet.
Yes.
What was you feeling?
So I was feeling like, in fact, I remember saying, actually, I had a job I was really good at, and now I have a job and I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm not good at it, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I had trouble like saying that, because I think we think we're not supposed to. And it wasn't that I didn't like my child. I just, this new role really that I had been thrust into. I mean, I was even really good at pregnancy. And so I was like, I was very lucky. I had a great pregnancy. I felt great. And so I was like, I got this. This was supposed to be the hard part, right? Like
yes.
I was good at labor and delivery, like all the things. And then all of a sudden I found myself and I was just lost. And I felt like I would say to people, I'm not wired to mother a newborn. I said, I like feedback. I like achievement. I like to do things I'm good at. I like to set expectations and have people meet them. And you as a mother can probably see where this is going. Like newborns do none of those things, right?
Yeah.
So what I found was I was looking at friends of mine who are maybe more adaptable or higher empathy or, less achiever. And I was looking at other moms that were wired differently than me saying, you were cut out to be a mom and I'm not. And so I was really struggling and felt like the way I'm wired does not contribute to this new role.
Wow.
And so I had to rediscover strengths and all the things I knew about strengths-based thinking and go back and say, hold on, strengths is not about what job you can do. It's about how you approach it. It's not supposed to be prescriptive, right? All the things we tell our clients, I had to tell myself and go back to, because I was doubting that I was wired in a way that I could be successful as a mother, whatever that means.
We could have a whole conversation about success as a parent, I suppose, right?
Well, I wasn't whole and I wasn't healthy because of the way I was really talking to myself about my talent.
Yeah. So were you all along having conversations with yourself about like about your strengths, or was there like a moment where you're like, shoot, I need to like reassess and start thinking of myself as an asset instead of a liability again? Like, was there a turning point where you realized like, man, okay, I do need to lean into these strengths a little bit, and then that's what changed? Or had you tried other things?
I think there were some small moments. So I remember like thinking about my input and learner strengths early in the days of motherhood. I was feeding or sleep training, or one of the things, like I was just sucked into, I had all the books out and I was on the internet for hours and I was like, we got to try this. No, we have to try this. And we have to try this. And finally my husband looked at me and he was like, we're turning off the fire hose. We're just going to pick something and try it. No more taking in information. And for me, that was like a small moment, one of many, where I realized, okay, wait, my strengths are in overdrive. I'm not taking advantage of the power. I'm not leveraging what my strengths can do for me. I need to go back and think about, how am I wired and how do I apply that to motherhood. And so
Wow.
that's what I started doing was I literally would think through, okay, achiever. So for me, that's getting things done. That's a lot harder as a new mom. So what is, one thing at the end of the day that I can feel successful?
Mm.
So I would start saying things like, did my child get fed today? Yes. And I would, okay,
Check.
check that off the list. Like,
Yep.
instead of, did I answer all these emails and do this laundry and run 5 errands? Because it's just not the reality at that point
Mm.
anymore. And so I started reframing, and then I felt like I could use the strengths perspective to my advantage.
Yeah. Wow. It's a really great example because it's like it's there all along. That achiever's there, right? Like, of
Right.
course, it's the thing that's driving you, but you realize it's also the thing that's driving you crazy, right?
Yes.
And
All my
so
students are overdrive, I
how
think.
do I do it? Like how do we, how do we dial that down? And you gave yourself
Mm.
a real um specific path. Like, hey, I'm familiar with this strength. I know I need to get things done. So there's going to be the one thing that I get done.
Yeah, one thing.
I'm going to try to convince myself. I mean, I'm sure on some days, like it was hard to convince
It was
yourself that
hard.
that one thing was
It
really
is.
going to,
It's still hard. Let's be honest. It's a
yeah.
journey, right? You don't arrive. But I can't imagine having walked through that without the strengths perspective to go back to. Because what
Mm,
I was trying instead was comparing myself to other people,
right.
which, and making excuses, telling myself I wasn't cut out for it. And I was using my strengths as an unhealthy crutch, I feel like.
Mm,
So for years, even before I became a mom in my work, I would use this word perfectionist. And basically, looking back, I realized what I was doing was I was using the fact that I knew I was an achiever to excuse unhealthy behavior or
yeah.
to say things, I'll sleep when I'm dead or all these things. And it's like looking back, I thought I wasn't leveraging that. I was using it as a crutch and
Right.
as an excuse for very unhealthy self-talk and unhealthy behavior.
Right. When really it sounds like you've been learning over the last 3 years, especially
For
like
sure.
to flip those around and say, okay, they're not a crutch. They're something I can actually use to feel like I'm a successful parent, to feel like I'm a successful
Exactly.
mother. So what did that look like? Like, tell us a little bit about that process. So you're feeling like, oh my goodness, all these other people have like these nurturing qualities and they seem to be
Yeah.
loving their life as a mother. And there's all these pictures
Yeah.
on Instagram about them, all their cuddle time. And you're like, on your
Yeah.
side, you're like, I haven't even taken a shower in 2 days. And I feel really frustrated that this baby doesn't respond to my expectation.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So what did that look like when you kind of started to realize that you're making that transition to feeling like
Mm.
I can be good at this. I am wired for this, but just wired in a different way.
Yeah. Once I realized it, I feel like I could take a look. And so, with expectations is a great example. I started looking at what is my response when my expectations aren't met. And so it's easy to do with a kid, right? So I think about the example of nap time, which is funny because my child's not napping right now while we're on this interview. Um, so I would think, okay, my child's never been a consistent napper. He would nap, but I wouldn't know. It would be 1 hour or 3 hours. Like I would never know. And so for a while, what would happen is I'd put him down and then assume I'd plan 3 hours of work to do.
Yeah.
And after an hour when he'd wake up, I would physically, just my blood pressure would go, it was like this
Yes.
response. And so knowing that and looking at it, I realized, okay, I need to set my expectation for like the minimum. And so I'm going to plan 1 hour of work. And then if I get 3 hours, it's like a bonus and I
Bonus.
feel great. But if I get 1 hour, then that's what I expected. I do yoga in my free time. And there was someone said once, peace begins where expectations end. And
Hmm.
that has stuck with me ever since because it's so hard for me not to, everybody sets expectations,
Right.
but I've had to really look at what is the expectation I've set. Am I just setting myself up for failure? And
Hmm.
so having that strengths perspective, I was able to make some adjustments so I wouldn't be feeling like a failure. I would feel like I had set myself up for success, knowing that I needed some of that structure. So I created as much as I could.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally. Wow. So, I mean, how do you feel? How do you feel now? Like, how would you describe the
Yeah.
difference between that, like, entry to motherhood feeling. And of course, I mean, you almost have to like discount the entire first year because even like, the most nurturing.
I wish someone would have told me that. I had really high expectations.
Oh man, I'm with you. I'm like high fiving everything you're saying right now because when my husband listens to this, he's gonna be like, is she you? Like. So I'm totally with you. So I mean, what does it feel like now? Like now, 3 years later, how do you feel like you're different, or how do you feel differently about your role?
Right. Well, first of all, I feel like I owe it to every parent out there to say, I have my moments and I'm definitely not perfect and it is a journey. And the things I naturally struggle with are the things that creep in our hardest moments. Right. So, but
Totally.
Overall, there has been a huge shift in my physical well-being just as a result of my response to who I am and how I respond to things. I like to think I'm more calm. I'm less high strung. I'm less high stress. I just have adjusted expectations. I think I've adjusted what achievement looks like, what success looks like, what is significant in my life.
Yeah.
And that's been huge for me because I was defining my worth by my work. And in some ways you don't get that as a mother. And in other ways, I know in theory that it's the most important work, but in practice, honestly, that's really hard for someone who's driven by external feedback because you don't get, there aren't, short of my husband who's kind sometimes and says, you're doing a great job. You're not getting a lot. My 3-year-old doesn't often look at me and say, you're such a good mom.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for getting me down for my nap on time, right? That doesn't happen. So I think my overall demeanor and as a result my wellness has improved because I've been able to make this shift. And I like to think that maybe if I have more children, I will at least start a little farther down the line than I did this time, knowing what I know now. I don't know. We'll see.
You will.
What was really hard for me this first time, I describe it as this analogy of I couldn't see the other side of the hill. And so everything hard felt like it would be like that forever.
Permanence.
One nap they skip and you think they're never going to take a nap again. One day they don't want to nurse and you think, oh, they're never going to eat again, and which is silly looking back. But when it's your first time, you just think, oh, it's going to be like this. And I've learned now that I can see the other side of the hill. And I try to tell new moms, like, good, bad, and otherwise, nothing is forever. Yeah. So as soon as you get used to it, they're going to change it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If it's something you love, it's still going to change. If it's something you hate, don't worry, it's going to change.
Yeah. And so I think at least having that perspective, and that's probably the learner in me a little bit, I think, being able to look at that experience and say, okay, here's what I know now. And yes, every child's different. And, next time it may be different, but at least I have something to compare it to. Whereas before, I just wanted to compare it to all the task-oriented work I've been doing, and babies don't work like tasks.
They really don't. It's kind of a bummer in our achiever world, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard.
Tell me a little bit about what happened kind of in your psyche now that you've kind of said, okay, these are the things that I have. You talked about comparing to other people. Like, what does that look like now that you feel a little bit more healthy overall?
Yeah. We live in a world, especially as moms, I think, where it's just so easy to compare. We have everybody else's Instagram feed to compare to, and everybody puts their highlight reel out on Instagram, right? So I've had to think really hard about who I follow, whether that's in real life or in social media world, knowing that I'm naturally competition is my number 7. And so that shows up for me in motherhood in comparing myself to, who's doing this better, which way is better. And so I have to be aware of that and really be conscious of if there's someone who I follow that they're not a bad person or a toxic person, but I create toxic thoughts around that, then I have to unfollow. And I just know that, I have a really great group of mom friends, and I've learned to honestly appreciate the powerful partnerships between the different ways we mom. I mean, one of my very closest friends, we laugh that she's like the type B to my type A. So she's like, she could just care less about any structure. Like,
right. She's like, I totally forgot the diapers today. It's so funny.
Fine. Like, what, whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm like, we're 2 minutes late for nap time. It's time for nap, right? And so I've tried really hard to learn from other people and to pick up pieces, but also to understand, like, I don't do it that way, and that's okay. But what can I learn from you? Because if all my friends were just like me, that would be terrifying because I'm stressed out all the time, right?
Yeah, you'd all just like egg each other on the whole time.
When I need more adaptability because she'll just speak it into my life.
Oh, that's really amazing. Tell me a little bit. What's your son's name again? I always forget. Topher. Okay. So you obviously, he's only 3, right? But you now you have to have that you've been living your own lens so much that, like, tell us a little bit about him. Just give us like a little sneak preview. Like, what do you think he's going to be like? And what do you think are some of the things that are going to be hard for you the way you're wired? And what are some of the things you think are like, we jive on this?
Well, don't we all as strengths professionals really try to like see our kids' strengths early on? I don't want to say diagnose, but we're like, what are they going to be like? So it's fun early on. He is a huge learner, which I love. And I think we share that. I mean, he loves books and asks so many questions a day that I literally don't know the answer to. We cover everything from animals to Bible stories to electronics to what he asked me this morning. Oh, what's under the floor, Mommy? What's inside the floor? I'm like, I don't know. Ask your dad.
Yeah, I don't. How would we figure that out? I don't even know.
He asked me once what was inside the walls, and I told him steel beams, and my husband goes, "There's no steel in there."
Thus the default. Ask your dad what's in the floor.
I was really confident that our house was that 5 tornado, but okay. So he's definitely a learner. I think he seems to thrive on a schedule, which he definitely gets from me. I think a lot of kids do, but if we do things out of order, it's a little bit scary for me because I know how I struggle with adaptability and I see that in him. And it's like, I want to fix my own weaknesses in him, which you can't do.
Nope.
But he's probably not going to be quite as, I don't think he's going to be quite as woo as I am. He's a little bit shy until you get to know him. So he's probably higher or later.
He's more this than this, right?
Yeah. So it's really fun to watch him and see, what he's into and, what he'll become. It's exciting. And I want to do my best, of course, to parent him the way he's wired to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And your powerful experience just coming into motherhood sets the stage for you to be so alert to, like, you, my child, are an asset, not a liability. Yes. You're wired on that way on purpose. And so let's dig into that. Let's figure it out. Like, let me help you. And now you're at a healthy place to be able to do that. And I love that journey that you described. And it feels so intentional. I'm just like, whoa, that's amazing how intentional you are about that.
Well, and I think, I know that what I went through in this journey and this experience and what I learned in the transition to motherhood is why I feel so passionate about speaking into moms and being able to take the strengths work I've done in the professional realm and put that in a way that's relatable to moms. I feel like it's my duty almost, especially with first-time moms, to say things like that no one tells you. I think, like, it's going to be hard. You're not going to cherish every moment despite what the old man in line at the grocery store says. Like, you're just not. Nobody, they forget. You do forget. But I just think that we have to get past that and just to be able to say to people, like, you are the perfect parent for your child, just like your child's the perfect child for you, but it doesn't mean that we're all wired the same way. Right. Strengths just hold so much power, and we know in the professional world and in parenting too. I just love the work you're doing.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's like my lifeline. It's like I almost feel like, well, I'm selfish by doing this work because I just need it. I need it to be able to I mean, I struggle with some of the very similar things that you do. And just to be able to not put my perfectionistic lens on my kids and be like, you know what, you
Yeah.
are who you are. And I want to let those things come up, even if they're different or they're messier than the way that I do them or whatever, it's just, I feel the same way.
Yeah.
So lastly here, drawing from your own kind of personal experience and of your journey and in motherhood in particular, what encouragement or advice would you give to somebody who maybe they're in the pit of it right now and they're like listening to this going, that's how I feel. I feel like I'm not cut out for this. I do feel like more of a liability.
Right.
What encouragement or advice would you give to them?
Well, I think if they don't know their strengths and understand the strengths perspective, of course, my first advice is find out your strengths so we can talk about it that way. But for people that do, like me, that understood the strengths perspective and just needed a recenter on it, I think when we switch roles, I think you have to go back to your strengths and directly apply them. And that's what I did. Like I thought through my top 10 themes exactly. What does this show up like in motherhood? What does this look like? And just like you would with a new job or a new position, I'm a communicator. How do I put that into, motherhood? What does that look like? How does my significance show up in this new role? And so I would encourage people to go back because you literally have a new job, right? So go back and look at, what is the power of your strength in this new role? How can it help you? But also looking at those blind spots and being aware of how can it hinder you, because those are the places you're going to get tripped up. And so I know what those places are for me, and I'm able to at least look for them or be aware of when I'm kind of falling into that basement side or, misusing my strength and that. And then I just have to reiterate to people, like, to see themselves as an asset and not as a liability, because we need more thinking like that in the world.
Yeah, we do. And we need more parents that feel that way about themselves so that then their kids feel that way about themselves. And
right.
We pass on what we think. They don't have to even hear it from our lips. They sense it. Right. So what a beautiful gift you're giving to Topher and to whatever your family looks like. And, I'm just so grateful to have had you on today. Thank you for sharing your story.
Being it's been
open. I know that it will impact, especially the mothers of the world who are in that same place. So
for sure.
Thank you for that. And hopefully we'll chat again soon.
Yes. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
If you are a mom, you already know that Caitlin's story is remarkable. I was just blown away by how intentional and thoughtful she was about pulling herself out of the toxic mental mindset and using her strengths to not only thrive as a mom, but also truly take to heart that she continues to be an asset and not a liability. So you can get to know more about Caitlin Kissee at her business site, propelpeople.com, or over on Instagram at Caitlin.Kissee. That's CAITLIN.KISSEE over on Instagram. And just like Caitlin, I really believe that you can be a part of creating thriving lives, families, workplaces across the entire world. Because when you orient your mind towards what's strong about you and about the people that are around you, great things happen. And hey, also, could you help spread this message? If you believe in the strengths perspective, or part of you was impacted by this interview today, would you head over to iTunes and leave a rating? That's the thing with the little stars. And if you're feeling inspired, a short review there would be so helpful too. So thanks so much in advance for that. I'm glad that you were here today to hear how others have fueled significant changes in their lives by focusing in on their strengths. And I hope you join me for more next time on Isogo TV.